Let's get started with the new chapter, Barriers to Communication. There are many barriers to communication, and these may occur at any stage in the communication process. Barriers may lead to your message becoming distorted, and you therefore risk wasting both time and money by causing confusion and misunderstanding. Coming to some of the common barriers to effective communication. Firstly, the use of jargon. Now, jargons are overcomplicated, unfamiliar, and technical terms. Jargon is the language of specialized terms used by a group or profession. For example, some of the common jargons are drill down, which means to look at a problem in detail. Another one is best practice, the best way to do something. Coming to the second point, which is lack of attention, interest, distraction, or irrelevance to the receiver. If the receiver is not paying attention to the person who is speaking to him, then a common barrier to effective communication takes place. Thirdly, differences in perceptions and viewpoints. We often find people with whom we are talking have a difference in opinions and choices. Therefore, often misunderstandings takes place. That's why it's a common barrier to effective communication. Fourthly, physical difficulties such as hearing problem or speech difficulties. It is a very common barrier to effective communication. Fifthly, language differences and difficulty in understanding unfamiliar accent. For example, here the people of India may face problem in China where Chinese people use their own accents. And last but not the least, expectations and prejudices which may lead to false assumptions or stereotyping. Now, coming to the next, yes, the intended communique will often be disrupted and distorted, leading to a condition of misunderstanding and failure of communication. The barriers to effective communication could be of many types like linguistic, psychological, emotional, physical, and cultural. We will see all of these types in details in the next slides. First comes the linguistic barriers. The linguistic barriers is one of the main barriers that limit effective communication. Language is the most commonly employed tool of communication. The fact that each major region has its own language, it is one of the barriers to effective communication. Sometimes even a thick dialect may render the communication ineffective. Example of linguistic barriers that prevent individuals from effective communication includes dialects. While two people may technically speak the same language, dialectal differences can make the communication between them difficult. Example of dialectical language barriers exist worldwide. Chinese, for example, has a variety of dialects that are commonly spoken, including Cantonese and Mandarin. Secondly, language disabilities. Language disabilities are physical impediments to language. Physical language disabilities that cause language barriers include stuttering, dysphonia, or an articulation disorder, and often hearing loss. Here are psychological barriers and emotional barriers. Coming to the psychological barriers, there are various mental and psychological issues that may be barrier to effective communication. For example, some people have stage fear, speech disorders, phobia, depression, and many more. All of these conditions are very difficult to manage sometimes and will most certainly limit the ease of communication. Here we have another type of barriers, which is emotional barrier. The emotional IQ of a person determines the ease and comfort with which they communicate. A person who is emotionally mature will be able to communicate effectively. On the other hand, people who let their emotions take over will face certain difficulties. Coming to the physical barriers to communication, there are most obvious barriers to effective communication. These barriers are mostly easily removable in principle at least. They include barriers like noise, closed doors, faulty equipment used for communication, closed cabins, etc. Sometimes, in a large office, the physical separation between various employees combined with faulty equipment may result in severe barrier to effective communication. Coming to the examples of physical barriers that prevent individuals from effective communication includes environment. Some barriers are due to the existing environment. For example, if you were standing in adverse weather conditions, your conversation would be hampered because you would not be able to pay full attention to what the other person is saying. Secondly, distance. Distance also plays an important part in determining the course of a conversation. For example, if the staff in an organization are made to sit in different buildings or different floors, they may have the substitute face to face communication with phone calls or emails. Lastly, ignorance of medium. Communication also includes using signs and symbols to convey a feeling or a thought. However, if there is a lack of ignorance about the medium in which the sender is sending the message, the conversation can be hampered. Cultural barriers to communication. As the world is getting more and more globalized, any large office may have people from several parts of the world. Different cultures have a different meaning for several basic values of society. For example, dressing, religions, or lack of them, food, drinks, pets, and any general behavior will change drastically from one culture to another. Coming to the next barrier, that is the attitude barrier. Certain people like to be left alone. They are the introverts or just people who are not very social. Others like to be social or sometimes extra clingy. Both these cases could become a barrier to communication. Some people have attitude issues like huge ego and inconsiderate behaviors. We may often find these people in every workplace. Coming to the physiological barriers. Certain disorders or disease or other limitations could also prevent effective communication between the various channels of an organization. The shrillness of voice, dyslexia, etc., are some of the examples of physiological barriers to effective communication. However, these are not crucial because they can easily be compensated and removed. Now we have perception barriers. People perceive the same thing differently. This is a fact which we must consider during the communication process. Knowledge of the perception levels of the audience is very crucial due to effective communication. All the messages or communique must be easy and clear. There shouldn't be any room for a diversified interpretational set. Hope this presentation on barriers to effective communication helped you all. Thank you.